Captain on the bridge.
All right, captains, we are back on the bridge, and today, all I can say is, wow. I'd mentioned this before in a lot of the videos leading up to Strange New Worlds release, that I wasn't sure, or I wasn't going to, or I didn't know if I was going to make a episode review for Strange New Worlds. Because up to this point, I've been covering the trailers, the season intro, along with whatever else we can get. One of the last videos was, of course, the sort of sound bites and interviews of the actors and actresses and what their thoughts on portraying their characters were. And I also had mentioned that I was probably going to binge watch Strange New Worlds because I didn't like having to wait for a week for the next episode. That went all out of the airlock. Yesterday, I watched Strange New Worlds, and first thing I'll say is I found myself back that very moment when I discovered Star Trek. It made me feel the feels. I've done this before. Let me emphasize that again. It made me feel the feels. It was like I was a kid again, seeing and remembering. So first I saw, of course, the Enterprise D, Star Trek The Next Generation, having that sense of watching it, just going, wow, this is cool. Wow, this is deep. And for me, being a kid, Star Trek The Next Generation had a lot of influence on me, of course, and I'm pretty sure that's come across in a lot of the content that we've put here on the YouTube bridge. I also thought covering all this stuff for Strange New Worlds was hyping me up to eventual disappointment. Of course, I tried to keep it positive, and I hoped, and that's one of the things that I've taken away from Star Trek was the message of hope. And boy, captains, let me just say, whatever expectations I had, not only did it meet it, but it exceeded it. I said in the videos before that if all the things that we covered, that we saw on here on the YouTube bridge, was all the good bits, I'm good. I'm in still. And that everything else on top of that would have been bonus. And holy cow, captains, this episode made me smile, made me laugh out loud, made me raise an eyebrow, and made me feel the feels, like I said earlier. It's been such a long time since I felt this feeling, and whether you want to call it nostalgia, fanboyism, I really don't know. So I found myself watching this episode and just going, wow. Literally just wow. And I tried to, again, look at it objectively, because I wasn't the hugest TOS fan, and I've mentioned that before, but I respect it. And one of the problems, of course, was with going backwards, prequel stuff. Was visually, it threw me off, and it does throw me off still. But what carried it forward was the story. And I always said there's three things I love about Star Trek. First and foremost is the ships. Next it comes to characters, and then the story episodes. I said in one of the videos before, the first two boxes were already ticked off. With this episode alone, it ticked off that third box for me. This hit everything that I want in a Star Trek series. And what made me think, too, as well, after watching it, like, this could have worked post-Voyager, in a sense where they could have taken this same crew and just put this on a different Enterprise in the future, and it would have worked still. in my opinion. I understand why they went back, of course, because this was stemming off of Discovery, and I'm okay with it. I really am. Because if they keep this up, oh my, oh, the FEELZ, captains, the FEELZ is just there. Everything that I saw here was just bonus, to be honest. And I ended up taking a bunch of notes I didn't plan on doing, but I did. And there was a lot. I didn't even realize how many pages there was at the end there. But what I want to do is go over some of the key moments for that in the episode, and then at the end, of course, dropping my ECs, of course. At the end, of course, give my conclusions. And really, I warn you, captains, there may be some fanboying here if you didn't know already. So fair warning. Now, we start off, of course, this episode with a ship that I'm not familiar with. At the time of when they're showing it, there's no markings. We can't see anything on it, but it's a one nacelled ship, literally a saucer, a pylon with a hole, and the nacelle. Of course, then it goes down to scenes of the planets, the aliens that we're going to be encountering in this series, or at least in this episode. We'll talk about that whole episode thing later, and it was really sort of a wake up for me. Not wake up, but just, again, what did I say? Ships. First thing I was looking for was ships, and we get a ship. We'll find out later what that is, but then, you know, it's not a ship that I want to see in Star Trek Online, I'll be honest, but it's there. It's now canon. That's the thing. It is now canon. And then, of course, this is probably one of the negative parts that I don't want to say negative, but just I don't think it was needed. So the next thing that you see is a picture, an overhead shot of someone laying in bed, female woman laying in bed. They're on her stomach and then looking for someone. Well, that someone, of course, is Pike, and then it goes down. Scene there, he's cooking breakfast. Looks a little rough. Not gonna lie, he looks a little rough. Grown a beard, long hair, and then, of course, the female is a captain. Is someone who, of course, he spends time with. And she comes down, they have breakfast, they talk about, again, they try to talk about why Pike is sort of, waiting on, or what he's waiting on, or asking, trying to get that information of what's bugging him. Of course, he says classified. I thought it was great, that interaction. I just don't think that scene, her in the bed, was necessary. I get it. You want to put it in there, that's fine. And you can already find and see the Pikeisms there. Like, it's just his little charm. I said this before, I have a man captain crush on Pike, and I will stick to that. Of course, during the conversation, his communicator goes off. I like the tone. I really did love the tone. To be honest, I thought that was one of my sound commands going off from my stream there. But it's awesome. He ignored it, of course. And she's going to go off on a mission, be back in a month. And, of course, saying, hey, I hope you're not here when he comes back. That was cool. Again, it's starting to really delve into that problem. And we said in the previous videos how they're going to sort of incorporate that. I think they went a little too much, but we'll speak to that more. I like that little touch there. I think it would have been fine without that scene there that I mentioned. And then, of course, he goes off riding the snow, and this we've already seen it in a trailer. The shuttle. I love this shuttle. Captains, if you don't know, it's a little shuttle. And, of course, it's Admiral April. Now, I don't have a lot of knowledge on April, but this little interaction between April and Pike, I really did like, because it was saying, hey, your girl Una, #1, is in trouble. And Pike's like, hey, listen, I wanted this time off. I don't want to do anything right now, blah, blah, blah. And even then he says, we need you back. He's like, no, even though he knew it was already Una. So this is how deep this is bothering him. Him seeing his future, him knowing his future. So much so that he's like, nope, it's okay. But of course, in the end, he gets ordered, and they totally. He still accepts the mission, and then it goes into the intro. Captains, we already covered this intro. This intro is amazing. Like, it's amazing. I love it. It still made me feel the feels after watching it 100 times, maybe even more. It's one of the best intros that I've ever seen in Star Trek in general. So then the next, of course, it goes to Spock. Now, Spock, I said this, that in Discovery, I could not connect with him. And I know that it's been said that it's a different Spock leading up to who, we all know and love, but I just could not connect with him in Discovery, and I still have not connected him with here. Now, this whole thing with Spock here, it was with him with the Prem, I believe, his girl, his woman, his wife. He gets asked to get married. They are kissing in a restaurant, and then they're asked to leave. I thought that was pretty funny. And so they're about to do the deed. And this scene, again, I didn't think it was quite necessary to show that. It's not that it's not new. We've seen in trailer that also Pike is going to be in a situation. He's going to be sort of, shirtless. And his communicator goes off about right before they're about to get to do their deed. And Pike says, are you are you naked? And, that interaction, again, Spock before that talks about his oath to the Prem, saying, hey, listen, I'm committed to you. I'm committed to Starfleet. They're going to work out. So it's trying to start building up the character of Spock here. And I know he's going to make his own way through it. Overall, even up to the end, I still haven't really connected with him. And that's okay, because this is only the first episode. So I got to keep that in mind. And then, of course, gets told about we have to go back, right? We got to, let's go, gear up. Next scene, of course, he goes up to that one scene that we saw, the sneak peek, like going to the Enterprise in the shuttle. Love the shuttle. Love the shuttle. Going over the briefing in his little pad there, and again, you can just tell he's just really covered and bothered. And another beauty shot of the Enterprise. And let's just pause right here. The respect that they gave the Enterprise is just, I love it. It is just absolutely attention to detail. Them showing the Enterprise, them in all the shots, it really, I did love. And gets on the transporter. Now the transporter itself, when he gets beamed onto the ship, it's just so massive. It's just so huge. And regardless, though, it looks good. It does remind me of the Kelvin universe. Obviously, this is, like I said before, this is one of the issues that I'm having with the technology, is that it's so forward, even though they're trying to make it harken back. But it's nice and clean. There's big room, and I believe the transport operator was Kyle. Spock and him start talking, and then he mentions Lieutenant Kirk. I didn't see that coming, and this is, just sort of first thing I thought, of course, was, well, Kirk. William Shatner is Kirk, but again, we'll get back to that later. And then go into just talking about things, and Spock mentions about Burnham. I'm surprised. I didn't think it was going to be mentioned like right away, but it was mentioned about losing Burnham. And you know, for the most part, him talking about that just connects it to Discovery. Again, without Discovery, we were not going to have this. So, as much as I don't like Discovery, I respect it because of what it has done. One, for Star Trek Online, we've gotten all the pretty ships. We've gotten the Disco Prize, the Enterprise, because of Discovery. So how can I not respect it? Then, of course, we are introduced to La'an, who is the... Now, La'an, I'm going to speak to La'an. La'an, I did... Man, this is where the expectations was exceeded. With La'an, throughout the whole episode, it was about La'an and Pike, for me. And the interaction between the two, I didn't... The character building was so well done, in my opinion. Even though it was only like an hour episode, it felt so meaty. Like there's a lot to grab onto there when it came to La'an and Pike. And I thought La'an wasn't going to be a big sort of character, but in this first episode at least, she was, and was the focal point. Was Pike first, of course, and then La'an. And I loved how she was portraying herself, and like we said, that lone survivor, that fighter, that standoffish, and it really showed throughout the episode. And of course, it all wraps up at the end there. But La'an, I'm more invested in now than I am Spock because of the first episode. Now, again, I have to keep in mind that these are episodic episodes, right? So there is going to be, especially the character building, and it is doing a good job of introducing the characters at this point. And the flow of the episode so far, I was literally glued to the screen. This is what, the first 10 minutes, and I'm just already fanboying out. So again, a bonus because it exceeded my expectations already. So then Pike does his speech there on the bridge. This is why I think I do actually love Pike's character. Is he's very commanding, but he's humorous. He has that just presence in him. And of course, we see Ortegas, Uhura, Enterprise beauty shot, and showed a bunch, you know, the engineering that was interesting to see. Again, it's just massive. Again, we know this ship is pretty big. And before heading out to warp, whole thing, and now Uhura and Ortegas didn't have a lot, especially Ortegas. Ortegas, I think I'm going to really like. Uhura is going to be, because she has some sass, and I like her. It's like sass innocence. Is that a thing? Sass innocence? And so they're leaving space dock. They're about to go to warp, and of course, what happens? He sees an image of his future, and everyone looks at him. And this is where Spock kind of goes, something's up here. Of course, he says his line, hit it. They go to warp. That aft! Yes! That aft. Sorry, captains. I just could not help it. Again, the respect, the Enterprise. I've always said this before, that the ship of the show is a character on its own. So the screen time that the Enterprise is getting here, I'm just loving. And the warp, it looked like more traditional, as it wasn't more like a disappearing warp, but a more continuous one-shot warp, if that makes sense. You can see it throughout its whole warp process before warping out. So I'm hoping they kind of work up to going back to TNG. Again, I'm always going to harken back to what I've seen, and because that essentially is what does go into future technology, right? So I always thought that this was a little bit more out of place, but it is what it is. And then, of course, Pike goes into his ready room and is thinking and replaying that moment again in his head. And even without saying a word, he's already conveying his doubt. Of course, Spock gets in there, they have a conversation, and he's doubting himself. He really is, but Spock kind of reassures him, you know, you gotta be you. And apparently this is a decade away of when the incident is going to happen with Pike. So how do you even deal with that, knowing when you're gonna die. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna pass away. But this is gonna be a layer that is gonna play throughout. I'm not saying that they went overboard here, but they're really making a point that this is something that's gonna bother him. But even though it's bothering him, he has enough inner will to get over that because he's knowing he has his crew that he has to take care of. And those moments show when he's being funny, when he's being inspirational, when he's supporting his crew. I'm just getting all that from him. And, you know, that conversation between Spock and Pike, I'm not going to lie, I had feels. And when I say feels, I'm not saying like I was going to cry or anything, but it was just, I really felt it. And when something stirs that emotion in you and brings you back to something that you can connect to, whether it be a memory or an event, you can connect with it more. And that's what's happening. I'm connecting with this all within the first half hour of this show. And I didn't know that I needed that, because this is the Trek that I've been wanting, and it's there. So, yeah, we're going to go over that more in the conclusions. Of course, they go to the planet, which apparently Kylie 279. Now, I notice here, of course, they're on the bridge. That view screen is massive. Holy cow, it's massive. It is so big that it feels like it's just unnecessarily big, because we know that the view screen on the original Enterprise is not that big. It's literally like a window that I have here in my house. I'm trying to get over it. I really am, but it's hard not to. And of course, they find the ship, which is the Archer. So that's the name of the ship there, is the Archer. And life signs, apparently they go through the manifest. There's only 3. It was Una and 2 other officers, and that's it. And what I love about this scene, again, so La'an comes into action here again. She assesses the situation and says, recommend deflector shields to full. And Spock's like, no, that'd be a violation of first contact. But she goes over saying, listen, we're here, something's up. She assesses the situation, and actually Pike takes, listens, and yeah, gets the shields up. And next thing you know, 2 torpedoes come in, hit the ship. Thankfully, of course, if the shields weren't up. Now, it looked like, again, I'm going to speak to the shielding. The shielding looked like it was more, again, conforming to the ship and not your conventional bubble. I'm used to the bubble. I need to see more of this if we're going to have that bubble look and or a closed form, close to the hull shield. I'm not necessarily a fan of that, because I've always been used to shields being a bubble around the ship. The exception, of course, Nemesis, when they started hugging the hull of the Enterprise there. But again, visuals, I'm trying to get over it. Can't really say I will at the end, but it is what it is. Thankfully, they had their shields up, and of course, Spock calls for red alert. Goes over, essentially, the planet, and he finds the warp bomb. First time I heard of that. A warp bomb. And, so they have a meeting with Pike, La'an, and Spock, going over the planets and all that stuff. And what I took away from this scene was more of how the relationship was forming, and how it was still kind of focusing on Pike and La'an for me. Again, Spock is being Spock, and I'm still having a hard time connecting with him, but this scene made me totally just focus on Pike and La'an. And at the end here, they're going to go down there. They head over then to get their disguises. They go to sick bay, and this is where we're introduced to Mbenga and Chapel. So with Mbenga and Chapel, I didn't connect much to Mbenga in this episode. He didn't have much, but what we know is Pike knows Mbenga, as Pike introduced them to the officers there, to La'an and Spock. Here, I take away was Chapel. Chapel was sassy, quirky, flirty with Spock, and I 100% was there for it. I loved it, and of course, she's like a genome expert, and essentially the disguises are, I'm going to inject you something, literally you're going to change into whatever alien species, and it's a painful process. She makes some notes here that because of Spock's biology, it's going to be a little sort of different for him. It's a painful process, so they're going to get a sedative, and La'an here is like, nope, I don't want it. She wanted to feel the pain, and Pike's like, are you sure? And they show the transformation, and wow, that seemed painful. It didn't show everyone else's transformation, but that was her choice. Pike let her, like, all right, it's your choice, and it looked painful because her rigid, like her whole forehead was like pulsating, and it was just really very subtle sort of CG effects. I loved it. It was okay. And of course, after that, they all go to the transporter room. Now, this is where I thought it was pretty cool what they do next here. They essentially are going to beam down, and they're going to have everything that they need. I am trying to remember here if that is the case, where you transport down, you're going to transport down with your clothes, with your equipment that you need. Now, they went down there without any weapons, which is, you think that they would at least try, but they didn't do so. And he makes a funny line to the officer there, the transport officer, don't lose my socks. I thought, again, him being funny, even though he's trying to, again, make everyone around him at ease. And that's the sense I get from there. And again, the transporter scene there, the whole room was just way too big. But I did appreciate the old school console with the operator using the transporter there to get them down to the ground. So, again, this is where the scene that we get Pike saying, why always an alley? And of course, Spock decides to say, where are my pants? I thought that was pretty funny. Now, on the planet, they're in the middle of civil war. And the one thing about Star Trek, and they've done over the years, is always mirror what's happening in the real world. And Pike's sort of referring this to as this is almost like, of course, a second civil war that the US had. So he speaks to that, and you see there's protests happening. It hit close to home. That scene hit close to home, but it's always been sort of like that in terms of Star Trek and reflecting on what's happening in the real world. So they come up with a plan. They need to find Una. So they're walking around, and then of course these two aliens come out, and she's like, permission to think quick on my feet or something like that. And she goes out, kind of all down in pain, screaming, while Pike and Spock kind of hide there from sight. I thought this scene was cool. She's like faking needing medical attention, and she's being carried off. And she has her hand behind her, literally. What at first I thought was like, what are you doing? And she's literally signaling Spock to give them the nerve pinch. Of course, they do that, and it was a good scene. I thought that was really cool. And then, of course, La'an's like, okay, I suggest you get them up to the ship here, because, yeah. And they're going to take on their clothing and everything like that. And so they're beamed up eventually. And they apparently need to take care of the aliens there. And this scene there was a little hilarious because Mbenga and Chapel are there and thinking, you know, of course, of the two aliens, Spock's disguise is starting to lose its sort of effectiveness, and they needed to find someone compatible, and of course, one of them are. And this scene again, they show Chapel a little bit more about her sass, her quirkiness. I love it. So the one alien wakes up. They both actually wake up. The one gets away. Chapel just runs after him. And of course, he's, you know, you're an alien. You're on a ship. You're just running, right? And eventually, the alien goes into the turbo lift. Chapel's like, oh, crap. So, you know, they're kind of running out of time because at this point, too, what's happening is they're kind of scanning in to get into the where they need to. And seen here, Ortegas is in that captain's chair. So again, we get a little bit of Ortegas. I'm totally for Ortegas. There's a situation, he says something like, always when I'm in the captain's chair, but she had to stall, but it was a little too late because they actually had to go in. So, you know, at the same time all this happening, that alien is loose, but Pike and La'an get through the scanner and it's Spock's turn. So going back to the alien in the elevator, Uhura's there. And this scene was cute. I really thought it was cute because the alien, of course, was like all scared and everything. And Uhura put the alien at ease with talking about tag ball. I think is what they said, tag ball. And it got him talking. Oh, I do, you know, that just got the alien from like level 10 to like level 0. And so scanning's happening. Spock's turn. His fails. Like, uh-oh. And at all the same times happening, they get to the bridge. Chapel beams onto the bridge, sedates the alien, gets what she needs, goes back to Mbenga. Spock is about to get, you know, is told to get step away because he's trying to scan. He actually scanned like 2 or 3 times. On the third scan, gets that whatever they needed to get into Spock's eye or to whatever. The transporter, the whole thing was the doctor told the transporter, you got to do this, got to transport his leg. Like, don't do that, or that's what? Not possible. At the end, he made it possible. Right on the third scan, it passed. The guy's like, oh, okay, fine, you're fine. So it went from step away to, oh, okay, you're fine. So that kind of was a cool kind of scene there. And they get to, you know, they're walking up. La'an says, okay, Una is here, but she's like really down. So they go into the elevator, and this scene was kind of hilarious. Again, it's kind of something that we saw on any of the Star Trek series. So they're in the elevator. Spock is the first one there at the front. There's one of the aliens literally looking over to Pike, like, hey, how's it going? And even 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 aliens couldn't resist his Pikeness. But and then the scene pans, of course, to Spock. His ear again. It's happening. He's the effectiveness of this whole whatever disguise is losing. She sees it, and of course, you know, La'an and Pike are aware of it. They're able to get off. She doesn't say anything, so thankfully they don't say anything. And of course, they find Una. Una's been they're in rough shape. Her and the 2 scientists are alive, so that's great. The one thing I was kind of fearing, to be honest with you, captains, was this was going to be sort of a Game of Thrones thing where officers or people are going to die, just left, right, and center. And I thought already that the 2 officers with La'an were dead. They weren't. They were safe. They were battered. They were bruised. And of course, here we find out Una and La'an already have a relationship. They're just like, oh, and all that little talk there. I thought that was really cool. And there was a moment there where Captain Pike goes, number 1, and both of them say, yes, Captain. And of course, he's like the original one. And I thought that was really cool. And here we go. We find out about the origin of the warp bomb. So apparently, this is going back to Discovery and how this all started. So apparently, this is something that Una called 0 points, and this was like classified information. And Pike was like, "I don't care, just say it." And 0 point was the point where Discovery went to the future, from my understanding. When all that was happening, this alien species saw all that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Captains, apparently they reversed their technology and created a warp bomb. I thought that was a little too much of a stretch, but sure, whatever. We'll go with that. And, you know, she speaks about General Order 1. That's going to, or later, of course, which is a sort of a protocol when it comes to all this stuff. So it doesn't really matter. Pike's a little upset, you know, and orders everyone else back except Spock. So, and then he is again haunted by this image of his future self. But they go back to the ship. Pike and Spock stays. They get to their destination there because they just needed to get to transporter range. They get them out, so it's good. They're safe. This is where I laughed out loud. Door opens. They're confronted with guns, and what does Pike say? Take me to your. I thought that was pretty funny that they would say that, and that he said that. It just made me laugh out loud. And again, the situation, the emotions were flowing, were from bad to worse, from good to lighthearted. And what did I say before in all of this stuff that we're covering? Pike is setting the tone, and he definitely is really good at that, setting the tone, conveying that with little subtle Pikeisms. I'll just call them Pikeisms. And it was hilarious. And then, of course, they're taken to the leader. He actually apologized, say, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry for all this," you know, and he sort of goes into the talk about what happened in Earth, and the aliens like, "You know what, we need this to end the Civil War, to end this war." Spock tries to say with mass murder and all that talk. And she says something. It again, I know this is all alien talk, but they're just talking through translators. And then she says, "Whoever has the biggest stick wins." And they're being taken away. His communicator, their communicators are on her table, and he literally shouts to the communicator, "Enterprise, get here." So the Enterprise then enters orbit to show them, and then he of course says, "Well, whoever has the biggest boomstick wins," right? And I thought that was cute. Let's just call it what it is. That was really cute. And beautiful shot of the Enterprise over the city. We've seen this already in the trailer, so I thought that was really clever. He already broke first contact, General 1 order, whatever it is, and he's just going with it. he's just going with it. And so then kind of goes to, it was it was like almost listening to a press conference here. Here are the aliens here, because that's the next kind of transitions to that. And then of course with the aliens debating, and during that debate though, here again is where the expectations were exceeded. A moment of Pike with La'an, speaking of what happened with La'an, and I didn't realize it was going to get this deep. The character development of La'an in this first episode alone, I'm in. I was already in with Pike. I was 100% in with Pike. But when it came to La'an, she was the surprise one for me. I thought it was going to be more Una, but in this particular episode, the first one, La'an got me invested in her, and just speaks to that. I loved the whole conversation. It made me feel, and again, you can see Pike's sort of concern, and the conversation was just really great, I thought. And then we see, of course, now Pike beams down. He does the hi, sorry, shows everything about what had happened to Earth, World War III at the end, how scorched the planet was. And then from there, he said, one of the things I'm not going to go through over too all, but he says, you can go to war or join the United Federation planets. And of course, the Star Trek theme happened. And I thought that was just, again, the whole thing that we've been looking for, I've been looking for when it comes to Star Trek. These episodes, and up to this point, Captains, I'm going to say this, up to this point in the episode, there was no Enterprise pew-pews. There was 2 torpedoes, 2 plasma torpedoes shot at the Enterprise. That's it. We had a shuttle flying, we had the Enterprise go to warp, but there was no pew-pews. And I was okay with that. This was more story-driven, character building, world building. I was in. I'm pretty sure my mouth was open the whole time, I'm not gonna lie. And the next thing that we see here, of course, is the sort of just scenes of the aliens kind of taking notes of the Enterprise. There's a school scene, and just them, I believe that they're going to be joining the Federation, how that works out. And then, of course, the Enterprise is heading to Starbase. This is, they go back to see Admiral April. This is the second time in the episode, and again, even in this little short scene there with April, I love the character. I don't know anything about the actor, but I loved how he was portraying him. Said, hey, I should be in jail for what y'all did. And he's like, you know, he actually is talking about Discovery and all that stuff. And this is where the term prime directive is born, within that conversation that they had there with Pike, April, and Una. And of course, Pike says, that'll never stick. Haha, funny. Even though it was quick, of something that was, we all know and love, and how it was just derived from that, I loved how that started, that connection there. Even though it was just off of an off comment that, you know, they're saying that this is the prime directive, and, you know, that'll never stick. And again, that whole sort of back and forth, again, I've always said this, they have so much history to draw from. They really do. And up to this point, I feel like they were drawing from it respectfully and still trying to make it their own, if that makes sense. So then goes to another scene with Pike and La'an. Again, another Pike-La'an moment. So this is like the third, fourth moment between the two, and it was just great. The conversation that they had, Una goes, of course, that it was Una that got her to join Starfleet. You know, Pike, she says, I didn't trust, or Pike said, you didn't trust me, and all that stuff. And of course, Pike does his speech about, you know, working together, and talks about the forest pods and about the lesson in growth. I thought that was really cool. And then offers La'an to join the Enterprise. And that's awesome. Again, this episode for me was focused a lot on Pike and La'an. And, you know, out of all of the characters up to this point in this episode, La'an had my attention. She really did. The actress, I don't know a lot about her. This is the first time you're seeing her. She did a good job. I really think so. She sold this whole episode to me, of course, and also Pike. So again, Pike gets to the bridge. Una briefs her, and even says, Lieutenant Kirk is on the way to the bridge. And this I didn't see coming. Of course, La'an is the actual new security chief. We knew that already, obviously, from the trailer episodes. So who comes onto the bridge? It's Samuel Kirk. I don't know a lot about this character, but apparently, of the little research I did, it's apparently Kirk's brother, Samuel. I'll see where this goes. Apparently, he's going to be working under Spock. Kind of weird, but this, of course, is going to build up to the eventual meet of Kirk and also sort of relationship building from this to Kirk and then a handoff. I'm really interested in seeing that. Of course, you know, Ortegas does her thing, and Pike does his thing, and Uhura says, "Cool." The Star Trek theme plays. It's just like, oof. And of course, Hammer just literally beamed aboard. That is the only scene that we see here of Hammer. And then, of course, Pike says, "Hit it," with the theme. Oh, wow. I'm not going to lie. I actually shouted, "Yes, let's go!" Because this whole episode was just awesome, Captains. And I really was brought back to my childhood and hopeful for this series moving forward. Again, I thought I wasn't going to watch it, but I couldn't help it. I couldn't help myself. And the whole thing where it really grabbed me was the story. I said first, the 2 boxes of my 3 why I love Star Trek was already ticked. And then this story really, at least this first episode, and going back to what we said earlier, I love how now we're going back to these episodic, because it ties it off in a little bow. I'm not left hanging. I don't, and maybe that's why I watched it. I'm consciously knowing, because I'm not going to be left on a cliffhanger. Yeah, there's going to be stories that will obviously continue on, but the main story there of there's a ship adrift, missing crew, alien species, civil war. Now they join Starfleet. Done. On to the next. Within that, character building. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay to watch this weekly, I think. No, not even I think. I am going to watch this weekly because it tied it off in a nice little bow. And again, going through quickly here some of the characters, and I find, like I mentioned, I'm invested in La'an. I'm invested in Pike. You know, now I have these sort of crew pictures that I made for the previous thumbnails that we did for the characters. And again, here we have Hammer. Again, we only saw him that one time when he was beaming aboard, this very scene right here. I'm interested to see where this goes, because there was a sneak peek of him that I saw. I didn't cover it, but of course we all know he's blind. It's going to be cool. He's got some fight in him. He's got some fire, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. M'Benga, again, I didn't really necessarily connect with him yet, but I get a sense of warmthness, a sense of just wisdom, and I'm hoping that we get to see some sort of handoff from, of course, M'Benga to Bones, right? Of course, there's Chapel. She's sassy. She's quirky. I love her. I'm in. And she's flirty with Spock, so I'm really looking forward to see where she takes it. She had a fun role in this first episode, and I'm for it. Of course, Ortegas. I'm looking forward to her, and again, with that sort of interview that we covered there, he was really geeking out and wanted to totally take this in for the fans, and I really appreciate that. And of the little that we saw her in this first episode, I'm looking forward to Ortegas. Now, again, Admiral April, don't know who the actor is. Really, in the 2 scenes that we saw him, I hope we get to see more of him moving forward. I really do, because he really already established a very commanding presence over Pike. But of course, the 2 already have a relationship, and I hope he has more of a part there in the rest of the episode somehow, even if it is just giving orders to Pike of where they have to go. Next mission. Uhura, of the little, again, she had here a little bit of more role, obviously, for Ortegas. She's fun. I loved how they're portraying her. I love the actress portraying Uhura, and she's being very playful with it. And I can't wait to see how she grows into, of course, the Uhura that we know. Spock, even throughout this whole thing, I still have yet to connect. Now, there was that one funny, hilarious moment here, and that I missed when he said fascinating, and then Pike's like, "I'm all ears," and of course that was hilarious. I hope I get to sort of connect with Spock. Even if I don't, it's okay. The actor's portrayal of Spock up to this point, I'm not necessarily saying it's bad. It's just I'm not connecting with him. I connected more with La'an than I did with Spock in this episode so far. And we've seen Spock more because he was already in Discovery. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be episodes within the season that they're going to give Spock his spotlight, and hopefully I'll be able to. But that's okay. If I don't, that's fine. I feel that I'm more invested, obviously, in Pike, but now maybe more La'an. Of course, Una. I thought this was gonna be Una and Pike, but no. This is funny. How it took this sort of way of pushing her out a little bit, but then of course you have to look forward to what she's going to be doing in the future as the number one. La'an, again, I'm looking forward to all of that, of how she plays out, if she's been playing more of a role as a security officer there. But it's okay. I'm more invested now with La'an. And of course, we have Pike. Captains, you know, I have the crush on Captain Pike here. Loved every moment of him in the whole episode. He was really good. That was actually the old Discovery uniform. This is the new uniforms here that they have. Sorry, Captain, with the background noise there. We just have some things going on here. But with that Pike, he was very, very commanding. His presence was there. And I think he's going to always be the one to set the tone. And I'm looking forward. Again, having heard that Kirk's coming to season 2 kind of makes me a little bit worried, but it is what it is. I just hope that he gets more of a shine throughout and a chance to shine over there. This is always going to haunt him. I think they did a little too much in this episode, maybe about like 4 or 5 times, but I think 3 times would have been fine, but it felt like it was just really, but they really wanted to hit home that this is bothering him, definitely. Again, we're going to have more of these scenes of these three. These 3 are going to be the main, of course. Pike, Spock, and Una. Again, I'm going to be interested to see how that transfers over to the original crew there. What I say, Captains, I do love my shittles. I'm glad we were able to see them flying about here and there. All these were just from previous videos that we did. And of course, the respect to the Disco Prize. Now, this model right here that you see on screen, Captains, this is from Star Trek Online. This is with the straight pylons. The only thing I wanted to say about the Enterprise is I wish they would have stuck with the straight pylons as opposed to the swept back. From what I'm being told, from what I'm being read, this was the approved Enterprise. But visuals, the visual department changed it to the swept back. It's going to be interesting to see how they sort of change that when they go back to the original series, but still a beautiful, gorgeous design. This ship in-game, I am so proud of owning this ship because it is the design that we got from Disco, which spawned Strange World, and that's why I say I may not like Discovery, but I respect it. I really do. And this is why I've sort of ventured out to this, covering this stuff, because we've had Star Trek Online ships and going to Star Trek Picard. For years, we've been having Star Trek come into Star Trek Online. And now, everything that we see here, I really do hope that we do get, like the costumes, I want. The shittle, I want. Everything else, the characters, the voiceovers, I absolutely want to have in Star Trek Online. At the very, man, could you imagine Pike? Could you imagine Pike there in Star Trek Online? I am 100% with that. And, you know, here again is that shot with Samuel Kirk we were talking about earlier. We're going to see where that goes. But for the most part, I'm all in, Captains, with this, with Strange New Worlds. I'm not going to say I'm going to be covering this. I just thought I want to get this out there because I believe in a lot of sort of, what you say, things happen for a reason. Covering this on the YouTube bridge here was fun. From working on the thumbnails, from actually giving my 2 ECs out there. So what happened was, last night on stream, and this blew me away. We were just talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I was playing Star Trek Online. We got raided, Captains, by Silver Metal Tavern. Captains, when we got raided, we were, I introduced myself. I said, welcome. I said, thank you for the raid. We got back to talking about Strange New Worlds. This Silver Metal Tavern is an editor for Strange New Worlds. Nani? What? Really? He was someone that works on Strange New Worlds, and I obviously immediately geeked out, but he allowed me to sort of just talk about it. And I actually watched his VOD after the stream. He had no one to raid. Anyone that he knew was not on. But he said, you know what? Let's go see who's on Star Trek Online. It's playing Star Trek. He didn't say Star Trek Online. He plays Star Trek. And he found us there on the Twitch bridge and raided us. And again, this felt like it came to a complete circle for me, from covering it, not knowing what I was getting myself into, and then all of a sudden ending off with, of course, watching the episode, loving it, and then getting raided by one of the editors of Strange New Worlds. So this is why I decided to make this video. I know it's about the longest video that we've made here on the YouTube bridge, but how could I not, with all of what has happened up to this point? And Captains, for those who subscribe to the YouTube channel, thank you so much. We'll continue to try to do these things. I'm not sure, again, I say this already, but if we're going to continue to cover the episodes. But I thought that this was just a great way to drop my 2 ECs because of how this all closed off last night with a raid from one of the editors of Strange New Worlds. Again, I've said it before, I will say it again. Yes, let's go! I'm happy, I'm excited for the future of Strange New Worlds, and I hope this continues on with this episodic format, with Future Trek, and all I can say is just nothing but good things. But Captains, we are going to leave it on this note, as we usually do here on the bridge.
Don't let them promote you. Don't let them transfer you. Don't let them do anything that takes you off the bridge of that ship, because while you're there, you can make a difference.